Welcome to the Pregnancy Help Podcast. I'm Christine Grimmett, and in this episode, we are recapping our recent Babies Go to Congress event and the March for Life. So first post row of these two events. So it's extra exciting for our staff who are from Heartbeat who went to both of those events. So this morning we're gathering a couple of those people who were there for a quick recap, what they saw, what they heard, what they experienced. For some of them, it was the first time, and for others, they've been there many times before. And so we'll kind of hear if anything's changed or what sticks with them throughout the year as they attended both the March and Babies Go to Congress. So before I get started, let me mention our sponsor is Heartbeat's annual conference, which is another event where a lot of pro-lifers gather. We do that specifically for those working in pregnancy help ministries. So board members, staff members, volunteers, anyone who's involved in pro-life pregnancy help work can go to our conference, get some training, do some networking, listen to keynote speakers. There's a lot of great stuff packed into this week. That's happening April 26th through 28th in Louisville, Kentucky. And if you'd like more information on that, registration is open as well at heartbeatservices.org. So with that, I'm going to kick things off to Andrea Trudden, and we'll hear a little bit more about her experience.
Well, thank you, Christine. I'm sad that you couldn't join us this year, but know that you had kept down the fort here at Heartbeat with our podcast and all the fun things here. So I'm the Vice President of Communications and Marketing, and I worked with Jessica, who you'll hear from in a little bit, to help really set up the Babies Go to Congress events. This was quite a fun year because it was the 50th anniversary of Roe. So a lot of energy and a lot of activities going on around. But I've been trying to total it up in my mind. I think this is probably my 6th or 7th Babies Go to Congress over the years. And then, of course, we always stay for our the March for Life because we just joined in with our other pro-life leaders. But this year had a fun energy about it, and it was a beautiful day. So very much so looking forward to talking about our experiences on Capitol Hill as well.
I'm Tracie Shellhouse. I'm the Vice President of Ministry Services with Heartbeat, and this was actually my first year at Babies Goes to Congress. It's been very exciting. For the last 20 years, I've been serving in pregnancy help. And so I have seen these stories, I've experienced these stories from a very different perspective. And it was so unique to be in a place where we're now sharing stories with our legislators and those that are leading. And for me, it was an exciting opportunity to just really share what we do in affiliate services and the impact that, especially in these circumstances, the pregnancy help centers and the maternity homes have on our clients that we serve.
I'm Terri Fox, and I am the Program Coordinator for Ministry Services here at Heartbeat International. This is my third experience with Babies Go to Congress. Each one had a unique feel for me. As I have an abortion story, so my first experience there meant something totally different. And then the second experience, I was there with a group of our donors, actually, who participated along with some clients. And then this time, just being there with these clients that we got to know a little bit and hear their moving stories and see how they've overcome so much.
And Jessica, you got to help orchestrate everything for the event.
Yeah, so this was my second Babies Go to Congress, my second also helping organize this event, but this is my 6th, I believe, March for Life. So it's been just a wonderful time getting to kind of see this over the years, and now getting to participate even more fully in events surrounding it was really wonderful. And I think each time you get to be a part of this, you get a different group of people, you get a different group of moms there. And it's amazing just the variety of stories and how pregnancy help serves. But there's a continuous thread through it all of the work of pregnancy help and just the care for these moms and their babies that get you in the feels every time, makes you cry a little bit, makes you tear up. It's just such a wonderful, encouraging way to spread the news of pregnancy help.
And Lora, you're the newest one on our team.
Yeah, so I've only been with Heartbeat for a few months now, and I've been to the March for Life several years, but this year was definitely really exciting because of the overturning of Roe. There was a lot of energy there, but it was my first time ever participating in Babies Go to Congress. And kind of with my background, I've led advocacy trips for bills or groups on the Hill before, but walking in with mothers who are pushing strollers and carrying diaper bags, just the engagement that we got from the offices and from the staff members was really, really cool. And they had great questions for these mothers, just to really share their stories of how pregnancy help has impacted them.
Yeah, and to bring it back to the beginning, in 2009 is when we hosted our very first Babies Go to Congress event. We had we, of course, being in pregnancy help, get to hear these stories quite often. We see the mothers, we get to hear the trials that they have to overcome in order to achieve a successful life, for however that is defined based upon the vision that she has for her life. And we know that pregnancy help organizations walk alongside her and all the impact that they do have, but legislators don't always know that. And so this idea was sparked actually after having a conversation with a representative, and he made a comment just kind of in passing about how he can listen to anybody in his office. And of course, he is interested, but he will stop and be engaged if a family walks through the door or if a baby enters. Let's be real. It's a photo op in a lot of cases, but it is unusual too, because there are adults walking through the halls of Congress all day long, very professional, dressed to the nines. But then you have this family coming in with a stroller and our little jar of puffs, and we are walking through, and it is different. So people notice. And so that kind of sparked the idea. And like I said, we've been doing our Babies Go to Congress events, where what we do in this since 2009 is we take moms with their babies, along with the executive directors or a representative from the Pregnancy Help Organization, to go and meet with their legislators. So we organize, and I say we, but Jessica takes the lead on this. We set up meetings to speak with two congressmen from their district and then the two senators from their state, so that they can we walk in, we do a quick introduction of what pregnancy help is and who Heartbeat International is, and then we really allow the mother to share her story. And that's the most magical time, because that is our focus. That is the story. That is the reality. And then we follow up with additional services and programs that the Pregnancy Help Organization provides for that state and that area, so that that legislator is aware and then has a better understanding of what pregnancy help is. We go to any and all offices. Some are very friendly to pregnancy help. Some are very not. But we do not avoid setting up and scheduling meetings with these offices that may be a little bit more hostile, because it's so important. The fact is, there's a lot of claims out there against pregnancy help that are simply not true. So when you hear the story from the mother's mouth, it has great impact. So that's why we have continued to go over the years. We used to go multiple times a year, and that still is on the table. But for now, we tend to go in January, so that anyone who would like to stay for the March for Life can do so. So that was a fun little activity this year. We had 4 teams join us, 3 pregnancy help organizations, and we had a little Heartbeat team as well to hop around and meet with some legislators. And so Tracie and Terri, let's go ahead and start with kind of your team. Tell us a little bit, it was an Ohio team, but tell us a little bit about her story and then the experience on the Hill.
All right. Well, we toured with Evelyn, and she was wonderful. She is so open with her story and what God has done in her life. But just a little bit of background on her. She grew up in an adverse situation. By the time that she was 10 years old, she went into foster care and pretty much was on her own most of her life. And so by the time she was 19, she had her first abortion. By the time she was 24, she had her second. And that one, there were complications that required an emergency D&C so that she didn't lose her life. And while these abortions, the way the conceptions came about is she was working as an escort, and actually had a very good, I guess, I don't know that you call it income, but she didn't have many needs when it came to material things. She had all the things that she wanted, and yet her life still lacked the important things. She was still looking for things to fill those holes. And those abortions that she had to fix the problems didn't fix her life. They didn't make her life any better. And so really her story in pregnancy help came about after she had had one child out of wedlock, and that one was 3 years old, and she found out she was expecting again. And she just could not see how she could continue her lifestyle, already parenting a 3-year-old. And so she was interested in chemical abortion. And she had set an appointment with Planned Parenthood on a Monday. But then the Friday before that Monday, she started, wanting to know, how far along am I? And I started calling around, finding a place to do an ultrasound. And at 3 minutes to 5 on a Friday afternoon, she made a call to a pregnancy help center. And she was more than an hour away. And but they said, come on. And so, Terri, I don't know, do you want to pick it up and go from there and share a little bit?
Sure. So the center waited for her, as Tracie was saying, and from that point on, they walked the journey with her to help her choose life for her child. And Evelyn, she goes by Eva, but she clearly and boldly states that not only was her child's life saved, but her life was saved as well. And she had been going to school. She'd used up all of her financial aid benefits, couldn't get money to finish her college degree. The pregnancy centers she went to, Women's Centers of Ohio, actually had a scholarship program, and Eva was able to get a scholarship, complete her bachelor's degree. So this past August of 22, she completed her education, and a week later she got married. She is boldly proclaiming the truth about what abortion is and what a pregnancy center can help a woman accomplish. So she and her little family of her 2 children and her husband Isaiah joined us for the meetings. And I loved how she would tell her story. And then when she was talking about choosing life for Hezekiah, she also included that she chose life for herself through accepting Christ. That is a big part of her story. And you could just see the excitement when she was telling that part of her story to the legislative aides, who were all attentive and asked questions and were very respectful and kind. And so it was great to see. Each meeting is a little different because it's not a script. And so you get a little bit different components of the story with each meeting. So it kind of built over the day, that little tidbits were added here and there that hadn't been told in the meeting prior. So by the end of our 4 meetings, you have even a little more complete picture of who this woman is, where she started out from, and the perseverance that she has just clung to get to the place she is. And she is not stopping. She is boldly sharing her story with anyone who will listen. So we applaud her for that.
And that was something that I'd say kind of impressed all of us as the women would share. Specifically at the end, we did a debrief. So the behind the scenes element is that we do an orientation dinner to meet the moms and babies and walk through the stories, set expectations so that they're not caught off guard on that Wednesday night. Then Thursday, it's a lot of walking, a lot of jumping, building to building to get where we need to go. And it's a wonderful experience. But to Terri's point, you're hearing a little bit more throughout the day. And so these women are repeating their stories over and over and cueing in on key questions that they're constantly being asked. So then it becomes part of their story. And then I had the same experience. I was on the team from Virginia where we were getting asked such great questions that all this additional insight was coming out. And it was so powerful because I was with Danielle. And just to put a note in here, all of these mom stories are going to be linked to within the podcast as well for further, for people who are interested in learning more. And we're going to get some videos as well, because these mom stories are powerful and they are a very good depiction of what we see each day in pregnancy help. But in my on my team, we had a maternity home, and she stayed in a maternity home for 5 years while getting her degree, getting a place for a job and getting a good job, to where she was a social worker for 5 years. And what was starting to come out more and more from Danielle's story is she had left a very traumatic life that included a lot of drugs, selling it and using, and then different crimes throughout the years. Found herself pregnant, knew she wanted to keep the baby, but didn't know where to turn. Went to the Paul Stephan Foundation in Virginia, and they taught her life skills. And we're not just an easy place to be. It was teaching her how to live as a responsible adult. And so then taking the knowledge that she learned while there and putting it into her work as a social worker and seeing the other side of it. She's like, I knew that I was going down this path where my kids would have been taken from me, and seeing the hardships of what thankfully she was able to avoid through the support that she received. And those key questions that the legislative aides were asking were drawing out these little tidbits that was just so fascinating. And she was a social worker for 5 years and now is working in a high school as a special ed teacher. So it's amazing to see what God is doing through her. And I had the privilege of taking my daughter with me, and she and Danielle's daughter, Leilani, were just buddies the entire time. And so it was really sweet to see, but watch this 10-year-old girl thrive, and Danielle, as well as I know Evelyn and also Kylie were sharing that in the midst of all of this transformation in their lives, they all have now accepted God into their lives, have welcomed him in, and continuously and boldly share that part of the story, which that was unique to me this year, to see the maturity. We talked about this as a team a little bit ago, the maturity of the mothers, and being able to communicate how they've been served, but then all the positive things that they can attribute to walking into that pregnancy help organization, all the positive things that have happened since because of starting to make those positive choices. So that was really neat. So Lora and Jessica, we had you bouncing around because you were taking pictures and getting videos on the ground. So thank you for one. But what did you see from your perspective?
Well, this is Jessica. I just wanted to say, you were talking about the boldness, and one thing that Eva said multiple times was, this is her Esther moment. This is my time to speak up and tell my story and speak the truth. And that was just, it gave me goosebumps every time she said it, because it's just, you know that coming into these situations, as much as these legislators are just people, and these legislative aides are just people with different kinds of jobs, there's always a hesitancy sometimes coming into these places, especially if you're not used to being in the political side of things. And so seeing these moms with their boldness and their willingness to do the hard thing and step up and tell their story, it's just not easy. Was just so encouraging, because that is not something that everyone's always willing to do. And so it is such an encouragement to see people come to DC and march for life, and seeing these moms' individual courageousness to tell their story and be that vulnerable before people who may not even agree with some of what they're saying was just wonderful. And I that's how much I love Babies Go to Congress. That's one of my favorite things about it.
Yeah, and I got to take kind of a behind the scenes and run between several groups in the meetings they had. And just what blew me away is the impact that these meetings have, with these women being so vulnerable yet so empowering at the same time, to boldly share their story and say, this is exactly where I was, and here's where I am now, and here's the journey where I got there. And it was one of my favorite meetings. It was with the Texas team in Representative Pat Fallon's office. And they said, it was one of the directors from Texas saying just the resources that they offer so many women in the area. And the aide goes, what? And just had this shock. And it was just, you could just tell it wasn't just the stories impacting them, but all this new knowledge that now they can give to their bosses, and they can serve to not only further pregnancy help, but further the empowerment of women.
Let me ask something real quick, because all of you were there, and there are a lot of these stories that are pretty public and the big planned events. Did anybody have any unexpected moments that that will stick in your mind long term? Because I remember I did get to go several years ago. And I remember moments in the hallways of Congress or in the hotel when having a little, in my group, we had a little 6-month-old baby and she was so sweet and she made everybody smile, or the taxi driver, or everybody else that we encountered. And those are the things that I'll remember that don't necessarily get reported. So does anyone have any stories like that that just kind of popped up in the moment?
I do, and I don't want to steal one of Terri's stories from the Ohio team, but we are in one of our last meetings with staff members from Senator Vance's office, and we were just talking about pregnancy help, and he goes, yeah, I contribute to the center here in my area in just a very small financial way. And I thought that was just great to see that there are people even on the Hill who are contributing in a lot of different ways, both politically and with his wife and expected child, just very small financially. So that was really, really cool.
Yeah, for me, oh, go ahead, Terri.
I was just going to say, I so agree with you, Laura, because he kind of leaned back in his chair and kind of like he was for us, he was with us. And that was really cool confirmation of, yes, he is really listening to what we have to say. And he asked some really good questions and was very engaged.
So for me, there were two, but one thing that I do want to say before sharing that answer is one of the things that we did, Jessica did a great job of preparing everybody for, is the reality is that for this week, the Senate was not in session. So there were fewer opportunities to meet directly. But one of the great things that we did have is these great conversations with legislative aides who, for those who aren't as familiar, may not realize they actually hold a lot of power because they receive the information and pass it on to the legislator. So if a bill is being introduced, the legislative aides are the ones who gather the info. And it's like, we have all this information on pregnancy health, we can do this. Or they're the ones who kind of decide, maybe that one doesn't get passed on to them. And so it was great. We had good conversations. And when we walked into Representative Good's office, Courtney was so sweet, and she remembered me from a past meeting. And she was like, it's so wonderful to see you again. And please tell me about this family and who's here, which was nice. But my two aha moments for the day, or not aha, but surprise ones, was when we were walking from the House side to the Senate side, because it was a cloudy day, but it wasn't raining at that point on the Thursday. So we walked in front of Capitol, which is always nice. We got some wonderful pictures, but Danielle just stopped and she goes, you guys go ahead. I feel really called to pray right now. And it was such a sweet moment. I was like, wait, okay. Anybody want to pray? And so we all came back to where she was, and she had a powerful prayer just over the leaders of our nation and everything that was going on. It was just like, very well done. It was incredibly sweet. And she's being such an example for her daughter in those moments too. The other moment was as we were leaving one of the offices, people were walking down the hall and they had a little cage full of 3 very, very fluffy, what we learned to be lion head rabbits. And so you never know what you're going to see. We saw a lot of dogs through the halls of Congress, but these 3 adorable bunnies. And I'm not certain what they were taking them into the senator's office for, but it was fascinating to see. And of course, the children were like, oh, and we adults were, oh, but it was very sweet. So it's very unexpected what you see in Congress.
I saw something at our Wednesday night dinner. So we had our orientation on Wednesday evening, and then we had dinner together, and the moms had an opportunity to practice telling their stories just to get them a little more comfortable. And when Kylie was sharing hers, she had some of her other children there, and her older daughter, as Kylie was sharing her story, her older daughter, she was so moved, and she just had tears in her eyes, and just the impact of that story was having on her daughter. And as soon as Kylie was finished, her daughter just went over to her, embraced her. And it was just a beautiful thing that she is being such an example for her children of representing what, just because you're in this dark despair doesn't mean that is where you have to live the rest of your life. And so that was just a powerful thing to see. And I just appreciated being able to witness that.
I think one of the things that we went into not knowing whether we were going to be surprised or not, is we did go meet with the legislative aide of one of the Ohio senators that we didn't know how receptive they were going to be to our mission. And so you sort of go in just waiting for the surprise. And what I appreciated is we actually had amazing dialogue. There were a lot of great questions. I think we may have met with that aide as long, if not maybe even longer than we did with others, lots of note taking, and that was great. But in the process, as Eva said something about, choosing life for a child and abortion not being good for women, there was a little bit of pushback, and it was very respectful, but a little bit of pushback of, well, it's every woman's choice. And as we've mentioned, Eva is very bold, and this was her Esther moment of standing up and speaking up. But she was thoughtful, and she was respectful, and she listened. But she came back around and still said what she came there to say. And ultimately, what she shared is, in this day and age, people tell women that you have to abort your unborn children in order to be successful and in order to be able to live your dreams. And that is the furthest thing from the truth, because those abortions did not make my life better. They only harmed me. But choosing life for my unborn child not only saved his life, but it saved mine. And I've gone on to be successful, and I was able to finish my degree because the Pregnancy Help Center stepped up alongside me. And today I'm living a life that I never imagined as a mother and a wife and a college graduate. And I am fulfilled mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And and it wasn't necessarily a surprise, but the aide, I believe, listened and received that. And so, going into an office that you're sort of waiting on surprises, it was a sweet surprise.
Yes, absolutely. I think that just goes to what I was going to bring up, was the fact that meeting in person with these women, you hear their stories. We get sent their stories before babies go to Congress and kind of edit them down and put them into our little stories. And it's the kind of synopsis of who they are. But then when you get to actually meet with them in person, you get to hear them tell these stories in these different settings and see the emotion and see what they've gone through written across their faces as they talk about it. It just brings this so much more to life. And we at Heartbeat, some of us didn't come necessarily from a pregnancy health background, unlike some people like Tracie and others. And so this is our opportunity to get to see what these pregnancy centers get to see every single day. And you see what you see every day when you're working with these women. And it is just such an incredible moment that I just treasure every time I get to see. So yeah, it's just incredible what an in-person time with meeting with these women get to do.
And that is something that I was able to explain a little bit to the people who'd never been here before, the moms, and some of the center directors who had never been here before. I kind of told them that I see the with any movement, of course, as we move into kind of the March for Life and what you're going to be encountering at the March for Life, every movement has different aspects to it. So it's kind of different pillars. And so when we have the activists, that's what we were seeing on Friday with the March for Life. And those are our friends in the movement with March for Life, live action, getting word out, awareness that's so big. And then, of course, we need our researchers with the CLI, Charlotte Lozier Institute, and others to provide us with key details so that we know how pregnancy help does help women in a positive way and how abortion does hurt women in various ways as well. And then, so we have our activists, we have our researchers, we have our lobbyists, the people who work to really encourage good bills that serve to help serve women well through pregnancy help. And then we have our legal side. So our friends at ADF and First Liberty who help us really when interesting lawsuits come up or challenges to aggressive laws need to come into play, especially now that the abortion issue is at the state. Those four pillars are fantastic, but they all guide then women who need pregnancy help to our side, our pillar of it, which is that service arm, the pregnancy help organizations, the maternity homes, the pregnancy health medical clinics, pregnancy resource centers. But the Friday at the march was the combination of all these people coming together. We saw Right to Life. We saw ADF. We saw all these people from various schools and such. So Lora, you were on the ground recording for, we were all on the ground, but she was actually like on camera on the ground, getting video and reporting live for us. So what did you see? What was the energy like Friday for you?
So I went out early, got to the rally beforehand, and really tried to run around to as many places as I could, talk to as many people just from different backgrounds. I talked to a lot of students. I talked to a lot of churches, a lot of groups, just asking questions like, why are you here today? And got a lot of really good answers. And just the thing of we stand with life. And not only we stand with life, I got a lot of people saying, I'm here today for my very first time because I want to show support of the Dobbs decision. I want to show support that we stand for life in our states as well as here at the Capitol. So it was really, really cool. One of my favorite things is we have a new hire here at Heartbeat International, a young girl who is new to the movement and never been to the march. So I grabbed her and we tagged along together, and seeing the march for the first time through her eyes. I kind of grew up going to the march. And so some of those things, just the wow of it, you take for granted, but seeing it through her eyes and, oh my goodness, there's a lot of students here. There's a lot of young kids. There's a lot of very empowered college students coming out here and saying, this is what I believe. And I'm willing to stand up and speak out and boldly say what I believe and why I believe it. So it was really good just talking with so many people. Again, like always, the number of how many people there in support of life blew me away. And of course, there was just the additional excitement since Roe was overturned.
And how about you, Jessica? You have been there, I believe, once on our behalf for Heartbeat, but had been to several before in past pro-life roles as well. So did you notice any difference this year, energy-wise?
Absolutely. So this, I believe, is my sixth time coming. So I've been in the pro-life movement for about 7 years now, professionally, I should say, I guess, through my different work. But this year, obviously, is special. It's the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, and also the first year that we've been able to say that Roe v. Wade has been overturned. And that's just such a unique moment in history. And there's definitely so many different people who come. There's people who pray, there's people who chant. But I think there's such a excitement of this transitionary time where it's going back to the States. And it's just a wonderful time to be there and get to see the young groups making up their chants and excitement. And I think there was always like that hesitancy of like, will there be a lot of protesters? How will this go? But truly, I think I saw 4 protesters, I think, in total. And just seeing, we took a different route this year around the Capitol building, and just to kind of emphasize the fact that this is now for the states and the legislature to decide, that this is no longer as much a court fight, that this is a new year and a new fight that we're having. And also getting to see that with babies go to Congress was really sweet. Getting to kind of explain to them what they're going to see, how these moms are going to kind of walk through this process and see how much they're being supported as well is really incredible.
Tracie, this was your first. What do you think?
It was very exciting. I had been serving in pregnancy help for 20 years. And so I had watched the March for Life on television, but I was always busy with my pregnancy center's Sanctity of Human Life Month events and our celebration of life, and had not been able to attend. And so for me, it was amazing to be in a crowd of witnesses, a crowd of people, and so many of them that had walked for decades. Year after year after year. As I was walking, getting to the rally, I was just asking people around me, how many years have you marched? When did you begin? Why? What drove you? And just hearing all of the different stories and all the different motivations the different things that draw each person there, but is the common goal of upholding the sanctity of human life and protecting the preborn child. And that is amazingly powerful. The walk itself, there were some that were somber, but I would say most, there was this beautiful excitement, like a collective excitement. And as someone mentioned, we had some great student groups that had chants going on and all of those kinds of things. And and I will say the one thing that surprised me, as some have mentioned, is I really did expect to see probably more protesters. I actually saw more protesters at the National Prayer Service that morning than I did at the walk, and I'm just, that is something that makes me a little bit curious as to the shift and what things are going to look like in the years to come at the March for Life. This year was a big shift, and this is the beginning of, really a year of Jubilee. For 50 years, Roe was, the law of the land, and now we've got it back into the state's hands. And I think that there is an excitement there too. But I also believe that many that came understand that the fight is far from over, that there's still much to be done. And what we're doing nationally is important, but also what we're doing in our own communities is just as important.
So my experience, this is my third experience with the march, and each time had a different feel to it for me. The first time I was there, although I had years previously worked through my abortion experience, I still walked with a sense of one of those babies that had been aborted in the millions was mine. But also knowing that I was restored and redeemed, and years before someone marched for me. So I felt like I was there marching for someone else to at some point in their life, hopefully would come to a place of forgiveness and redemption as well. So it was a little different experience my first time. And then several years later, the second time I went was in 2020. And I paid more attention to the route, because the significance of ending up at the Supreme Court building was very significant. Well, this time we marched past the Capitol, and the significance of, lawmakers and legislators and having to be engaged on our state levels. That just had more impact for me. But while we were waiting for the march to start, our Heartbeat group had gathered on one of the corners, and I was standing holding our Heartbeat, or our pregnancy centers are great for America sign. And this gentleman came up to me, and he had a t-shirt that said abortion is murder. And of course, we all know, we know why we're there. And he started talking about the things that pregnancy centers don't do. And so specifically not sharing the gospel. So I had a very interesting conversation with him about, absolutely, we do share the gospel with women, but we have to be mindful of getting them the help they need, and them being open to hearing that gospel and allowing the center staff to share that, pray with them, or share the gospel with them. So it's always interesting to hear what people in the pro-life movement have different perspectives of what you may or may not be doing in the work, in the service arm work that we're in. So hopefully I, directed him to some information, and we chatted and everything. So hopefully it made an impact, and he had a better understanding of that sharing the gospel is, it's high up there on our list of serving these women compassionately and with care that they need. So all in all, it's always a great experience to be in that environment, and just ultimately glorify God in the work that we're doing.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see the different perspectives. But again, going back to what was said earlier, it's a common goal. And so we are all there to proclaim that we believe in the sanctity of human life. And we are willing to shout that loudly and say that, yes, we need to be there for women. We need to serve these women so that they don't feel that abortion is their only option. And to the point that was made a little bit ago, we were discussing this morning as well as we meet for prayer to kind of just go over a small recap and everything. But we do see this going more along with the Dobbs decision to the state. So we know that the March for Life National is already coordinating. Ohio is one of those states where we were introduced to a March for Life this past October, and we see that number growing more and more as more people take that up within each individual state, because it is so important. So while we are probably still going to be, of course, supporting the National March for Life, it's important for people within their own states to be looking for those state rallies if they feel called to do so, or at least in that conversation, Terri, it's an opportunity for that gentleman to find out more about pregnancy help organizations and maybe tap into it to learn a little bit more. So it's always a good opportunity to really expand knowledge of the vast ways people can get involved in whatever way they're called in their hearts to do so. And so it's just a good opportunity and a great reminder each year for us through our Babies Go to Congress event and through the March for Life to know, one, these are lives, these are tangible examples of life that have been served through pregnancy help. And we get to hold those babies and talk to those young children and hear them share their stories. And then actually, this year at the March for Life, they shared Victor, who was our Babies Go to Congress from Ohio last year, shouting that he loves his life. And so it's always very fun then for us to move into that March for Life and get with the thousands of our closest friends and stand up for a mission that we all believe in. So thank you, Christine, for having us on today to talk a little bit more about this fun event for us internally here at Heartbeat International, but then to share a little bit more about our experience with both Babies Go to Congress and the March for Life.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much for your time. I know there's a lot more we could have told. And in fact, you talking about your own experiences reminded me that Heartbeat International's Facebook page has loads of pictures. So you can see firsthand what their view was from the march. Check out the links that I will post in the show notes of the mom stories. And let me warn you, you might want to have some Kleenex handy because they will make you cry tears of joy. They are very happy tears because you'll just be so moved by how God's working in these women's lives. I know I was watching the videos last week and I was definitely crying, but they are powerful stories. So get an inside look on what these pregnancy centers are doing for these women and truly understand where they come from and where they are now. It's just incredible. So with that, be sure to subscribe to the podcast to stay updated on what we continue to do throughout the year as the Pregnancy Help Movement. And thanks for listening to this episode of the Pregnancy Help Podcast.